because you first loved us. Help us to remember we're here to be like Yeshua, not like the lady next to us, not like the speaker up here. We're just here to grow in grace and to be like Yeshua. I pray that the ladies this week are challenged where you want them to be challenged, comforted when you want them comforted, and bold when you want them to be bold. I pray for Kayte and Christy and myself that we would just speak your words and no one else's, not ours. I pray that these women would feel loved like never before, go home ready to pass that on to their families and to those around them. You are good to us. We pray all these things in Yeshua's name, amen. So if you don't know my friend Christy Jordan, you're about to. I'm going to let her come up here and introduce herself. She drove a long ways. She's been a great support to me ever since I've known her. That's how I got to know her. You were helping me. I started a new project like I do every other week, and she said, Amy, I can help you with that. I know some things. And she just was wonderful. So we've become good friends since then. So, Christy Jordan. Wait, I forgot Kayte Abaffy.
I was like, I'm going first.
I'm still nervous. Kayte Abaffy. Good grief. Kayte Abaffy. I apologize. I have been calling you guys by the wrong names. It's because I'm new to this. I'm sorry. This is Kayte Abaffy. I'm going to let her tell them about yourselves when you get this microphone. Tell them where you come from and what you do and things like that. Okay, tell them about Max. Okay. Kayte Abaffy, then Christy Jordan. I'm sorry.
Hey guys. Ooh. In the mouth. All right. Hi. I'm Kayte. Ah, we're here. Yay. This is so crazy. Oh my gosh. Ah, I'm Kayte. I'm from Maryland originally. I grew up in Silver Spring, then I went to college in New York City where I met Luke, my husband. He's not here, but I'm just doing this. And we got married. He was kind of thinking Torah-ish things. I was not, but then I had a dream, and then I was. He's a journalist, and he wanted to tell the story in a movie, so we eventually made a documentary called The Way to kind of show the journey that we were on and that a bunch of other people are on. Oh, don't clap! I'm like a whack-a-mole. Okay. That's it. We live in Ohio now. We're just about to move into a little tiny house. We have a little baby. He's 1.5. I can't think about him too much or else milk, you know. I can see over this podium, which is wonderful, because I was nervous about that. I saw it on stage, and I was like, there's no way. It's going to be like me at the counter of, you know, like Chipotle, like. Okay, I'm going to start now. No, this is great. This is like a, okay. So I've actually switched my last talk and my first one. First shall be last, last shall be first. So the program discrepancy is my fault. So the title of tonight's is What's Your Even Now? I will explain what that means. Okay. Look around. Actually. Okay. We are the women who know God. The God of the universe, right? Who made the ocean and the mountains and the moon and the stars and us and dessert. Like God, we know God. That's who we are. And all of this, hopefully this whole time that we have together, will be about knowing him in a more rich way. One time this is gonna sound weird, I wrote my own obituary. Because I heard it was a good exercise to do if you wanted to get your priorities in line. What do I want people to say in the end? And it was like, she was a good cook, she was fun. No, just kidding, it wasn't fun. A good friend, you know, a servant. But the most important thing I want people to think is that I knew God in a way that was alive. I didn't just know about him, I actually knew him. Shoot, why am I getting all teary? It's important. You know, he's real, and he can make such a difference in our lives, and that's what I hope we get out of all of this stuff. Not sort of like peripheral information floating around him or knowing him, or not just how to like have a more shalom-y life, but just knowing him, because that's really what it's about. And so it's amazing that we get to know him. You guys know this, but this is who we are, and it's really cool that we get to demonstrate it and feel the difference that it makes to actually know God, because I think it does, and it should. So peace. Sorry, that was the preamble to the Constitution. Okay, one time I experienced actually supernatural peace. This is what I would call it. I was in Thailand with Luke. We had gone on this big backpacking trip. We sold all our stuff like into just what would fit in the backpacks we kept, and then we just went for a while. And it was like this tropical island, which sounds great, but also there's like bugs and stuff. But anyway, it was beautiful. We were having fun, so we decided to extend our stay for like an extra month, because we both work on the go, so we were still working. We weren't just luxuriating. I said this word to Christy earlier, and she thought that was a word. Anyway, so this trip to Thailand was amazing. It was lush, it was beautiful. There was a beach, there was curry, there was everything. And then it started raining and raining and raining until the people who lived there, it started flooding, actually. The people who lived there said it was the worst flooding that they'd had in 40 years. And we saw people's homes washed away, and we actually were flooded into the place where we were staying. Because of this, the waters around the island were also really rocky and turbulent, and all the boats stopped going in and out for a while. And that made us overstay our tourist visa. Oops. So the day that the port reopened and a few people were taking boats, we had to get on one of them and go to this other island to renew our tourist visa. And I am not a fan of rickety travel situations or small boats, anything like that. I barely made it to the island, then we had to come back and do this trip. And so it was really scary. It was very scary. And I thought I was exaggerating until just a couple weeks ago, I read this article about a boat similar size in Thailand, similar location, I think similar time of year, that capsized from waves and killed 48 people. So I was like, oh. But anyway, we're on this smallish boat going to the island, and it just gets really rough. There's grown men going, totally getting thrown around. All the attendants on the boat look kind of tense. I'm like, you guys, this is your job. Why are you nervous? And the railing, around the outside of the boat, I was looking out the window as it goes like this. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. And Luke was kind of nervous, and he's great with boats. He actually went up on the top deck so that he could just get fresh air. And I was like, I'm not going out there. I'm not flying over the edge of this boat. Are you kidding? So I stayed down in the bottom, and I was so scared that I started crying. It was really scary. And so Luke came down to check on me, and he prayed with me, and I remembered this exercise. It's really weird, but right in the moment I remember this exercise. I actually want to teach it to you guys, because it's a weird way to, at any time you want, shift how you feel. And I think it has biblical foundations, although I will give a disclaimer that I learned this from Tony Robbins, which you could have a lot of feelings about, I understand, mixed. But for me, my rule is if it rings true at first and then aligns with scripture and then it works for me, I keep it. So this is one of those things. So I'm going to draw something really quick on the board to help illustrate. Hopefully you can still see lower down on here. Okay. Oh, it's so nicely written though. I don't want to erase it. Okay, I'm going to do it over here and see if you can see it. Can you see that? Do you know what it is? Perfect. This is a body. Alive. Lower lashes. That's an eye. Okay. Here's the exercise. It's very easy. And I actually did this on the boat. So, language, that's the mouth. Physiology, what your body is doing, that's the body. Focus. What are you looking at? If you can change your language, your physiology, your focus, you can actually weirdly shift your mood at any time. And I tried this on this boat. I was crying. I was freaked out. I thought I was going to die. And it worked. So language as in, remember when Yeshua was like, but who do you say that I am? what are you saying about the situation, right? And often it's in your head. Physiology, as in, pick up your mat and walk. Stretch out your hand. Go wash in the pool of Siloam, right? There's all these like things that change what your body's doing, because that's really important. And then the last is focus. As in, when Peter was walking on the water towards Yeshua, he was good as long as he was tracking with him. And then when he like took his eyes off and started looking at the wind and the waves, that's actually when he started sinking. Focus is like critical. So those are the three things, and you can remember them if you can remember my horrific drawings over there. And so this is how I did it on the boat. I first, instead of thinking, where are the life jackets? Why does everybody look so tense? Could I die? Like all of these things, I just started singing, because that's the easiest way for me to like shift into a more biblical mindset. I started singing, oh man. By the way, I was sick last week and completely lost my voice. I don't normally sound this sandpapery, I'm sorry. But I started singing, You Are My Hiding Place. You know that song? You are my hiding place. Yeah. And that took over. Once I started singing that about him, about how he is my hiding place when I'm afraid, I didn't have space for my other thoughts. So I was like, okay. And then, what's next? Physiology, the body. My feet were like just, I was sitting like normal, like this. And every time the boat rocked, my feet would like jerk up like this. It was very unsettling. So I just picked my feet up off of the floor and sat like this. And then the last thing is the focus. The sky was really dark, and the like railing of the boat, I was watching it like rock insanely. But I looked up and there was like one patch of blue sky. And it kind of just reminded me that like, my God owns this storm, is above this storm. And these like storm clouds are not the top. There's something above that, and it's sunny and it's fine. And guess what happened? I fell asleep. Yeah, I fell asleep. It's still shocking to me. I went from feeling like I was being just rocked by a kind of capricious, how do you pronounce that? Like just a wild sea, to feeling like I was being rocked to sleep by my Heavenly Father. I remembered, wait a minute, I actually know the person animating these waves. Do you know what I mean? It was weird. All of a sudden, it became not something happening to me, but it was like almost for me. I rocked to sleep. It was insane. That was the supernatural piece. And so it wasn't the exercise that like was some mystical, magical thing. It was like the truth that it allowed me to hone in on. And the truth was who he is. It was about knowing him, and that's what kind of freed me from the fear, I guess. And that's the point. And of course, that story reminds me of another story where people were freaking out during a storm on a boat and somebody was sleeping, right? In Mark 4, and the disciples, and they're like, don't you care if we die? And he's like, calm down. Don't you? So this is where the title of this talk comes from. What's your even now? Because when I read what Yeshua says to the disciples, then he says like, still you have no faith. Some translations say still, some say like, you know, even now you lack faith. And I felt like the heart underneath that is like, don't you know me? You've seen miracles, and you've seen me have compassion on people, and don't you know? And I realized I was on the right, track with that when you see what the disciples ask next, which is, who is this? That even the winds and the waves obey him. It's about knowing him. Like, who is this guy? Whoa. Like they didn't know that about him yet, but they were learning it. I feel like when you know someone and you know their track record, you know what they're capable of, you know their heart, you know their power, it inspires trust. It should. And so us experiencing his peace is really closely linked to our trust and our faith. Have you ever watched like an ice skater fall? You're watching Ice King. And then they fall, and you're just like, oh my gosh. And so then you're watching, and you're just like, oh, I hope they make the next jump. This is so stressful. You're like, you can't relax because you're just rooting for them, and you're just like, please. It's just so hectic. And then on the flip side, if you watch somebody super masterful, they always land their jumps. They're like killing it, and you're just like, wow, just in awe, and you can sit back and you can relax. I feel like we treat God like he's the ice skater who's just fallen. Like, I wonder if he's gonna pull through. You know what I mean? We're like tense about it. Why are we tense? He's never fallen. Right? Okay. So, after the boat incident, I kind of realized that I had gotten stuck in a cycle on certain things where God had already proven a certain aspect of his character to me, and I was still fearful about particular things that I shouldn't be, because he had proven himself there. I'm like, why am I in this weird loop? I don't know if you've ever felt like that, but safety during travel was a big thing during this trip, because there were rickety bamboo bridges that people had built a long time ago, and every step you would take would be a creek, and then underneath would be a massive drop, or there'd be motorbike rides along a sheer cliff face, and Luke drives like a maniac and just be praying, and there'd be little boats and stuff, and it would always inspire this panicky sort of unpeace. It's not a word, but I knew that God had already proven himself, and that he'd always been with me in all sorts of travel situations, and I didn't need to worry. And so I wanted to break the cycle, so I decided to write out a prayer that could be kind of like a declaration of people used to build memorials, they'd leave a pile of rocks somewhere where God did something cool, so that when they come back they can remember and not lose sight of what he'd done. And so I wanted to do a prayer that was kind of like that. But before I share it, I want to kind of show you something. Isaiah 26:3 says, probably already know it, you'll keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on you because he trusts in you. Because he's trustworthy, right? And I looked up the word for stayed, and it was to lean on or be supported by. Right? So, I need 2 helpers and a chair. There's the chair, all right? Thanks. This is gonna be super easy. It's not some yeah, it's very one person just has to stand there and one person just has to, yeah. Okay, perfect. Thank you, guys. All right. Don't sit yet. Okay, so which one of you wants to be God? All right, you're God. Okay, you stand right here. Don't get used to it. Okay, perfect. You stand there. And you are going to be life circumstances, okay? This chair is going to be anything that we lean on that makes us feel peaceful. It could be, it could be anything for you. It could be your savings account. It could be the fact that people think highly of you or think well of you, or just a good reputation. Or it could be the fact that you have a vacation coming up. Anything. Think about what it might be for you and kind of envision that as we do this. So, I'm going to lean on this chair. I'm leaning. Okay, now I'm going to look away, and when I give you the signal, I want you to kick and or jostle the chair. Okay, so leaning on this chair, I'm so excited. I've got a great vacation coming up. I just need it so badly, and I can finally relax when I go on this trip. Oh no, there's been a hurricane, and the island blew up, and now I can't go on the trip anymore. Let's do it again. Okay, I'm gonna look away. Oh no, something horrible happened. Kick the chair. Okay. Right? Okay. It's all right. No, this is perfect. That's what happens. You get thrown around, you get shaken around, you lose your footing, you lose your sure footing, okay? Now we're gonna do this again. So here, I'm gonna lean on you. I'm so excited about this vacation, but even if I don't go, you're so good and you've still been so good to me, and I can just rest at home because you restore my soul. Take the chair. See that? It's a very silly illustration. But we lean on the chair, even though we have God all the time. And we know because we get frazzled when something happens that we didn't want. We get shaken, and not that like you guys, thank you, you're all done. Thank you so much. Yay! And it's not that we're not like human and don't have emotions about things, but you know when something like shakes you more than it should, makes you more upset than it should, the upset lasts longer than it should, then it's tainting your whole day, your whole week, your whole whatever. I think that oftentimes like the feeling of peace happens when things don't bother you because you're not leaning on them. Here's a recent example. So, okay, when we launched The Way, like the day that we did something big with our website, like maybe the DVDs were ready or something, the like whole site like crashed, totally crashed. I was just freaking out. I was like, ah! But like just yesterday or 2 days ago when we like launched the pre-order for the Christmas question, site also crashed, and I was like, praise God, whatever. What am I gonna do about it? It's like literally, I did my job, this is out of my control. I was like, sure, whatever. This actually, the fact that it's not working frees me up to like work on my speeches for this retreat. I was like, this is perfect. I'm gonna be doing email blasts and stuff. And it's so weird, it's like just a year apart, but it's like just realizing, I know God. I know He wants me to do this project. I can't control the coding of this, whatever's going on this site. It's fine. And it used to like, that used to be a thing that would have like, you know? But it's fine, it's really okay. How am I doing on time? Okay. All right. Is this making sense? Does this mean anything? I so want it to be helpful. I want to like say something that resonates in some way. And if not, hopefully there'll be like Holy Spirit subtitles so that you'll just hear something that I didn't even say, like what Christy said. Just, okay. So back to the boat. Remembering that God was like Lord over this storm and that He was the one animating the waves totally shifted how I thought about that circumstance and allowed me to experience supernatural peace. And man, and like the leaning on God thing. We say so much like all these like jargony phrases like just lean on God. Give it to Jesus, whatever. Like what does that mean? Like lean on God. Even with an illustration, I think that a lot of it is like a head game, is mental, is like the inner monologue. With this exercise, the mouth, the body, the eye, 2 of the 3 things are what you're saying about your situation, right? And then there's that verse, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. So it's like the understanding is what we like often lean on. Again, it's like what you're kind of saying about what's going on. So anyway, I want to share the prayer that I wrote like during that trip to try to arrest the like cycle of nagging things that were robbing my peace, even though I knew God had already proven Himself in those areas. So it was kind of like, you have authority over my safety. You have answered every prayer I've ever prayed for my safety. And that's not always, it's not always the case that every time you say something, He does something, but sometimes something bad happens and He works it out or whatever, but you learn about His character, that He loves you, He's in your corner, and He has all the power. Another part of the prayer was, oh my gosh, okay. So Luke kind of calls me Woody Allen. He thinks I'm a hypochondriac, but I'm just very sensitive to my body. Like if my pinky toe feels funny, I will know it, I'll be Googling it, I will have essential oils on that toe. In 30 seconds, very aware of every little sensation, but he thinks I'm a hypochondriac. But so when we were traveling, and we also are like freelance, work for yourself, no health insurance, we don't speak the languages of these countries, if something weird happens, I don't know what they're gonna do with me in the hospital in Thailand. Like, I just hope that doesn't come to that. But I would have like weird little moments of like, oh my gosh, I feel weird. And he's like, just pray about it. But that would be a recurring thing. And then it would never be anything, or the answer would always be things I already knew. Eat vegetables, take vitamins, go outside, sleep. Don't be a weirdo. Like, don't have wine and ice cream for lunch and then... So anyway, part of the prayer was, you have authority over my body. And in my experience, he's answered every prayer I've ever prayed for my healing. I don't still have the cold I got when I was 6 or whatever. But also, he does have authority over our bodies because he created them. And the last thing was that you have authority over our next steps. Like a good shepherd, you've consistently led me to better places than I could have imagined. Not the places that I wanted, but better ones than I could have imagined to shape me into what you're trying to do. And so every morning for the next couple months, I said that prayer. I tried to have it be the first thing that I said when I woke up in the morning, whether out loud or just in my head, before any other thought could pop in, before I could check Instagram. And I did that for a little while, and then the Instagram thing struck a nerve over here. You guys are Instagram checkers like me. After a while, I forgot about doing it every single day. But then I also noticed that I was not plagued by those 3 things in particular anymore. Those things were not popping up the way they used to. And I was like, this is great. This is great. Isn't it great when you feel like, I'm progressing? Do you ever wonder, am I a better person than I was yesterday? Am I worse? Am I neutral? What's happening? Am I progressing? And it was really cool because I felt like, wow, it's cool if you see victory in something, right? It's worth celebrating. Sorry, I gotta get some coffee, hold on. Okay. So what's your cycle? Do you guys have a thing? Do you have a thing that you know, God has totally proven himself, but it still pops up and you still get anxious about it even though you know that he's good, especially in that area because you've seen X, Y, or Z. For the Israelites, I think they had a thing with provision. Freaking out in the wilderness when God had sent them out of Egypt with doggy bags of gold and treasures and all this loot. Talk about a swag bag. They had all the gold, and then they get in the wilderness and you're like, what are we gonna eat? I'm like, are you kidding? You're dripping in gold. Right? It sounds silly, but I feel like we all do this. We have something where he's been really good, and then that same thing still freaks us out. Why? I'm not saying why, I'm saying why? To myself too. Okay, so you guys all have paper or something, paper and pens. I want you to think about if there's a thing in your life like that, a thing that he's proven because you've seen him do something awesome or powerful, and that you still sometimes question or still have anxiety about or don't experience peace in. And try to write out your own little prayer right now. It could even be structured like mine if you want. You have authority over blank, your thing. And then the next line, I know because blank. And see if you can think of something. Let's just give you a second. Yeah. So write down something that you feel like God has been faithful to you, an area where he's been faithful in your life, but you still sometimes lack peace in that area for some reason. Maybe it's your health, maybe it's a relationship, maybe it's work, maybe it's money, maybe it's your weight, I don't know, anything. And then kind of try to take note of the thing that he's done to prove himself faithful. So that's in your prayer, almost like a little memorial. Does that make sense? It might take a second to think of something, but that's okay. She asked if I could repeat the third part of my prayer. Mine was about safety, about my body, and about next steps, like just guidance for the future. Oh, sorry. Oh, just kind of having anxiety. Well, not anxiety, I wouldn't call it anxiety, but like, so, I don't know, I was praying about like, because I was nervous about sometimes where we would go next, because like the way we traveled, we didn't like plan it out and stuff like that. It's like, pick a country. Like, sounds weird, but, and also we both are kind of like freelancing workers, and so you're always trying to like figure out what's the next project, what's going on. You know, you don't have like, you get paid every Tuesday, boom, boom, boom. It's like kind of just uncertainty in general. And I have had a feeling about that kind of for a while. And yeah. You can look up when you're done also, because then I can gauge how much longer we need to marinate. Okay. Now, okay. Hey, George. Do you have the song ready? Okay, here's what we're gonna do. Sorry. Whenever I'm like at a conference or something and people start saying like, here's what we're gonna do, or I need volunteers, I'm like, oh my gosh, what's gonna happen? So sorry. But anyway, what we're gonna do is basically just stand up and we're all just going to, at the same time, and with music going on so you don't feel self-conscious, say your prayer out loud. It could be a whisper, it could be a yell, but the idea is to get the truth that we know about him more into our nervous system, and that we begin to arrest the cycle of like something that we want to, the fear and the anxiety that we want to like graduate from. Does that make sense? Because sometimes, like with this exercise, you got to change what you do with your body. You got to change what you do with your voice. Sometimes, like, you know, when does peace come? Oftentimes, it was like after a battle or something. You have to kill people to get peace sometimes. We got to kill these things that are, you know, attacking our shalom, right? And so you can't always be like, God, I hope that, you know, sometimes you got to be like, That was a sentence with like only 2 actual words. But I feel like I can do that. I feel like you guys are tracking. Okay, so stand up. In a moment, George is going to start playing this song, and I'm just going to count to 3, and you can have your eyes closed. If you memorized your prayer, you can just read it, you can whisper, you can yell. But we're all just going to say ours at the same time, and just no matter how you do it, with conviction. Because the idea is that we know God and that he's proven amazing things to us, and we don't want to continue to doubt him as if we didn't know that he was faithful, right? Okay. All right, George, start playing the song, and I'm going to count to 3, and then we're going to do it. 1, 2, 3. You have authority over my safety. You have answered every prayer. All right, you can sit down. Thank you, George. All right, I'm wrapping up. This might sound intense. I don't mean it in a condemnation-y way, and I'm going to explain after. But when our lives, as the women who know God, when our lives lack peace in a crazy way, it actually tells a lie about God. It says that you can deeply, truly know him and still be racked with the same things that people are who don't know him. How can that be? He's God. How can that be? You know, and that's not a thing of condemnation, because we've all had lacks of peace in our lives before. It's just a challenge to not accept like worry and fear, like racking fear as a part of your identity. That's not who we are, right? And on the flip side, when we can demonstrate his peace regardless of, you know, who's kicking our chair, of how your chair is being kicked, of who blows up your chair, you know, whatever, it tells the truth about him, which is that he's trustworthy and he's good and he's on our team. It's like, what more could you want, right? It tells the truth about him, that he is our rock, and although there will be life circumstances that of course will feel emotions and there'll be ups and downs, it's a wonderful thing to lean on him. And that's the end.
I'm so glad I didn't skip you tonight. Thank you. I'm going to let Christy tell you about herself and share her heart.
Thank you. How are y'all doing? Who in here hears me talk and thinks I sound normal? Raise your hand. Okay, so we got Texas and Tennessee and Alabama. All right, that's good to know. Take me a sip of water here real quick. I want to brag a little bit. I found out, I was really shocked to find that a lot of y'all hadn't seen The Way. I don't even know how that happens. Y'all, that documentary has changed my life. And to this day, sometimes when I'm feeling alone, sometimes I need a little bit of a sanity check. You know, no, I'm not the only one. I work from home, and I will just play that movie in the background just to hear it. I love it when Jason Toe comes on, because they talk normal. They're from Georgia. So y'all definitely, that movie is one that you can share with anybody. It's from a very compassionate viewpoint. Also, obviously, I'm a big Oxen fan. If y'all have, I showed my son, he's 20, and he's in college, and I showed him some pictures of Oxen last year, and he's like, wow, cool merch. So you know that that's a really good thing. So if y'all have any, I decked him out and I got him more tonight. So if y'all have any teenagers, tweens or anything, Oxen's definitely the way to go. I need to tell y'all who I am from a standpoint of what the Father has done in my life. And I'll just do this tonight, and then I'm going to go into my spiel, what I want to share in my heart. And I hate getting emotional. I'm not going to do it. I've done said there ain't no crying in my room tonight, and I ain't going to do it here. I'm going to try not to. But suck it up, Buttercup. My name is Christy Jordan. I'm a 9th generation Alabamian. And I'm nobody special, but I come from some awfully good people. My family were sharecroppers, and their legacy, they had really hard lives, and they had every right and opportunity by anybody's standard to complain, but they didn't. They always looked for the good in everything. And you know, you find, seek and you shall find. So they found the good in everything, because that's what they were looking for. A lot of times when we're looking for something to complain about, we find that too. Well, in 2008, is it 2008? The whole passing of this being 2019 is so weird. My daughter told me a couple weeks ago, she's like, Mom, I really like vintage things. Like, have you ever thought about maybe what it would be like to live in the past in like another time? And I said, yeah, baby, there's so often I've thought, man, wouldn't it be neat to live back in time? I said, what era would you like to live in? She's like, I was thinking maybe like the 2010s. I just about fell out, y'all. 2010s? But in 2008, I was a stay-at-home mom, which I still am. I'm a homeschooling mom now. And I don't know, I think a lot of times the Father puts a longing on your heart for something that He wants to give you. That's the best way to explain it. And I said, Father, if you gave me a chance, I know I could be good at something. I said, if you just gave me a chance. And I'm going to try to give you the condensed version. Long story short, I started a blog. And within that first year, the first month, my husband and I used to compete. He's an engineer. He's a rocket scientist now. You know, it's usual in Huntsville, Alabama. And within that first month, we both had blogs, and he had an engineering blog, and I had a food blog. And we would compete good-naturedly. Oh, how many page views did you get today? How many hits did you get today? And it was about week 2, we went out to lunch and we came back, and I had my first recipe go viral. And in about an hour or so, I had 50,000 page views. And that's when Ricky quit competing with me. He said, it's not fair because everybody has to eat, but not everybody needs engineering, you know. But at the end of that first year, I had 15 million page views. And going into the second year, HarperCollins approached me and offered me a book deal. At the second year, I started having 15 million page views a month. At the end of the second year, Southern Living approached me, and they created a position for me where I would travel around the country and do TV appearances for them, representing them. And then I had 2 more book deals. And then I went out to LA and I filmed TV, and I used to, my kids at the time were in a private Christian school, and I would drop them off at school and go to the airport and fly to Atlanta and do TV and fly back in time to pick them up in Carline. And it's just been amazing. I mean, all these things, nobody can do this. Nobody can make a plan and make this happen, you know? And I felt like there was something more. There was something underlying kind of that he was setting me up for, but I didn't know what, but I just kept waiting. I just kept waiting. And then about 4 years ago, it was about 5 years ago is when I started. We were sitting in church. Every Sunday we were sitting in church, and I was so hungry. I've been a believer all my life, as long as I can remember. Actually 12 years old, I had a big key moment in my life, and I was sitting there, and the Father started amplifying my hunger, and I was so hungry, and I kept saying, Father, there's got to be something more, there's got to be something more. And the word I kept thinking was authentic. There's got to be something more authentic. And so I went to church more. And I felt like I was going to church and I was starving and I was getting a piece of lettuce. And the hunger just kept rising up within me, and I couldn't take it anymore. It was painful to go and only get that lettuce and still be hungry. And so I left the church, and I started just reading my Bible and just saying, Father, there's got to be more, there's got to be more, there's got to be more, you know. And my husband, it really worried him because he thought I was falling away. Eventually he started seeing that I was trying to get closer, you know. I was trying so hard, and I just kept reading my Bible and reading my Bible. And then I started seeing things in the Bible that I had not seen before. And the Father finally started putting the pieces together. I called that my desert time. You know, the Father takes me out in the desert when he just wants my attention to be on him. And the weirdest thing happened. I started noticing things. I started seeing little bits and pieces of the puzzle come together. And my friend Lisa, who's here, I wasn't a friend, I didn't know her, but she owns a farm, and I had liked her farm's Facebook page. And I contacted her and I said, you're posting some things that it seems like you're seeing what I'm seeing. Can we talk? And we got on the phone, talked over an hour, and she said, I hear there's a church in Huntsville that meets on Sabbath, but I only know the name. I don't know where it is or anything. And I said, well, I can find out that. I can figure this out if you give me a name. Well, that same week, she had ran into our friend Donna. Donna and her husband had gotten their windshield windows tinted. And as they were pulling away from the place, Lisa was pulling in, and suddenly the tint on the front of their windshield starts rolling up from the bottom to the top. And they had to go back. They met Lisa. That Sabbath, I pull up and get out of my car. Donna and her husband get out of the car. Lisa gets out of her car. We saw each other for the first time. We went that week. It was Bible study. It was the Word. It was focused on the Word. So the next week I told my husband, I said, you got to come. You just got to come to this. He was so skeptical. And he goes in there and they're using all these words like Yeshua and all this stuff. And I'm thinking, ooh, you know, I'm a little nervous. We get out in the car after the service. I'm like, okay, make her break, make her break. And my husband looked at me, and I realized what a blessing this is. And he said, I'm all in. And from there, it just exploded. You know, that warp speed knowledge download the Father just gives you. And about 2 years earlier, the Father had put it on me to start a Facebook group. And I went about a year being like, well, what you want me to start the Facebook group for? Tell me what it's for, and then I'll start the group, you know. And he wouldn't. I really get things on a need-to-know basis. It's almost as if he knows me. But I had finally started the group, and my goal was maybe 300 or 400 people to get in that group. And I said, and when I started seeing all this stuff, we had been kind of studying the Bible in kind of the more traditional way, like, ooh, let's do a memory verse this week. You know, not anything deep, what I had known. And I started seeing all this stuff, and he has still not told me what the point of this group was. And when I started seeing this, I said, Father, what am I going to do? I can't tell them this. I can't tell them this stuff. They're not going to hear this from me. And it was, Father, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I went on and on to say, tell me what to do. Tell me what to do. They won't hear this from me. And that was when I finally heard his voice in my head. Now, the Father speaks Southern to me. And one day, I guess he got tired of me beseeching. Father, tell me what to do. They won't hear this to me. They won't hear this. And he gave me the most amazing wisdom that has been so tremendous in my life. And he said, you get them in my word and you let them hear it from me. And that's when I knew what that group was for. And so I started reading them. We started going through the Bible. This was actually 2018 is when we hit it hard. We started going through the entire Bible together. And we just started going through it again. All those people, I let them invite, okay, tell your friends we're going to go through the Bible again. We completed the whole Bible, Genesis to genuine leather. And we just started the second cycle, and we have over 13,000 people in that group. And the cool thing is, I'm not telling them, you need to do this, you need to do this. We're just reading the Word. And sometimes I say, if y'all think we're being repetitive, keep in mind who's being repetitive. This ain't Christy. This is the Father being repetitive. So we're just reading through the Word together. Last Sabbath, this lady posted a comment, and she said, okay, I'm going to say it. This is my first time. Shabbat Shalom. And last Saturday was just this explosion of all these people. Oh my goodness, it's my first Sabbath too. It's my first. We're learning. And it's so cool because I'm not pounding that into them. This is all the Father, you know. And so now I know where all this was leading. Everything from 2008. When I said, Father, if you give me a chance, I know I could be good at something. I know I could do something for you. For a long time, I thought that meant being a food blogger or a TV personality or a cookbook author. This is what it's for. It's just to encourage people to get in the Word. All of those roads have led to this, and it's just been wonderful. I do want to ask y'all for some grace. If you visit my blog, I am a Southern cookbook author. Y'all know what's on there. Now, I've come into this way. And we have been eating clean for 3 years. And I prayed and I agonized, what do I do with all these blog posts? And I experimented with just taking them offline. And I was getting all these emails. I searched for this recipe, it didn't come up. So instead, I prayed and prayed. And what the Father led me to do is I've gone to those recipes and I've put a note at the top. We no longer eat pork. But this recipe can be made with, I do alternatives and things like that. And that has actually led to some wonderful emails and some really great conversation. A lot of people, of course, they want to know if I'm Jewish. And I tell them, no, I'm a believer. I believe in Messiah and all that. So it's been really great. It's opened some great conversations. Right now, my assistant is texting me like 5 times a day. Hey, I want to share this post. Hey, I want to share this post. And I'm going back. She's finding posts where I'm trying to go back and change my language because there's a lot of things. Thank you. We don't, we keep the biblical feast days now. We have left holidays and we've turned to holy days. And so what I want to ask is if you read a post on Southern Plate, check the date. Check the date. And then please, thank you for your grace in that. So that's who I am. But today, there's a couple things I want to talk to y'all about. I don't know why my nose has suddenly decided to start running. I think inside my mind is crying and I'm not doing it. One of the great things, the Father has blessed me with many things. And one of the things he has blessed me with, and I can honestly say that now, is I suffer from depression. And I'm not talking about blue days. I'm not talking about just a little something. I'm very grateful that I suffer from depression, because I was one of those people when I was younger that I was always happy, always upbeat, always energetic. And if somebody had told me they were depressed, I'd say, well, just get happy. Which, by the way, is the worst thing you should ever tell to anyone. And I think we all deal with this in one way or another, especially in this world, where we have never been more connected in our world than we are now, but also never been more isolated than we are now. And so I want to kind of explain what this feels like to you. And I want to tell you some strategies that I use on a daily basis and how I trained myself to be a happy person, because it is something that is possible. Everyone is broken differently. We're all broke differently. Some people are broken in ways you can see. You may see someone with a cast. You may see someone in a wheelchair. You may see someone with a cane. These are all visible ways that people are broken. And that lets you know that somebody's dealing with something and they need a little bit of help. But most folks aren't that easy to tell. Some people have broken hearts. They're suffering from grief, depression, emotional trauma. They're trying to overcome abuse in their lives. These things aren't as easily seen by us, but make no mistake, we're all broken in some way. Two of the biggest struggles in my life, and I'm going to discuss both of them, hopefully not too long here, is my inability to feel like I was loved by God, and my struggle with depression. And he used one to teach me how that he would fix the other one as well. I had a very difficult time. For most of my life, I didn't believe that the Father loved me. I wanted to, and he certainly showed me. He showed me every day that he loved me, but I couldn't accept it, and I couldn't really believe it, and it hurt so badly. And it was like every time the Father showed me he loved me, I was trying to explain to him why he shouldn't, or why he didn't really love me. Maybe he just didn't realize that he didn't really love me, because I'm not somebody that was worth him loving, And so it hurt so bad, and I think he turned up the pain to the point where I had no choice but to come to him. Why do we always do that as a last resort? Don't that drive y'all crazy? I realized, oh my goodness, I've been doing it again, And so I got a blank notebook and I got a pen. And I went into a room of my house where no one could hear me, and it was just me and the Father. And I said, Father, I can't live like this anymore. I'm tired. And it hurts. And I need to be able to feel like you love me. And I know logically you do, but I don't feel it. I don't feel like you love me. I can't accept that. And I said, Father, I can't do this anymore. And I don't know how to fix it. But I know you do. And so until we figure this out together, I'm just going to give you a blank page every day. And so every day I would go back to that room and I would open up a blank page and I would just start writing. The first day I looked up verses on love in the Bible, and I just started writing those down. All the different ways love is described in the Bible. Every day it was different. Some days I would write angry letters about how much it hurt and what the hurt felt like. Some days I would write about how unfair I felt it was that other people could feel like he loved them, you know. And I found myself this breakfast one morning. It was the craziest thing. I was with the marketing head of Samaritan's Purse, the marketing head of Compassion International, and the marketing head of VeggieTales. And we're all sitting there having breakfast and having this powwow, you know. It was all these women. We were about to go on a mission together. And I said, y'all, I need to tell y'all something I'm struggling with. And they suggested I read this book called Redeeming Love by Francine Rivers. Has anybody read that? Okay. And they said, oh, that book is you. That book is you. You've got to read it. Is anybody horrified right now when you know? I mean, if you've read that book. So I had to go on a book tour, and I was driving for a long time in the car. And I'm listening to this book on audio. And, oh, it broke me because I'm thinking, they think this is me? The lead character, it's loosely based on the story of Hosea. And so the lead character is this woman who's just been through horrible things, and she's lived this very colorful life. And you can take it very personally when people are like, what kind of a person do they think I am, you know? But I'm like, okay, I'm committing to this. I'm listening to this. And I listened all the way there. I think it was like a 16-hour book. And then I listened all the way back, and I'm still thinking, where is this? Where am I in this? Where am I in this? And then all of a sudden, I kept talking to the Father, and this was about a year's time had passed, and I'd been given a blank page every day. And all of a sudden, the dam broke, and I got it. And the water just came rushing through. And I pulled over real quick because I have to process things by writing. So I pulled over and I get my laptop out and I just start writing everything. And I realized the main character in that book, no matter what she did, he loved her. It wasn't because of anything she did or didn't do. It's the same reason why he loves me. Because I'm his baby. I'm his baby girl. And I can't make him not love me. When I'm seeking him and I'm just I want to be near him. I want to feel him. I want to feel his love. I want to please him. I want to live for him. But I never thought I was good enough. And he finally brought that about. He made me see it. But I had to live myself into the answer. You know, there's this beautiful poem I love by this German poet. And he says, for now, just live the questions themselves. You know, in some distant day, you'll find yourself, without even realizing it, living yourself into the answer. And so that was a big turning point in my life. And it taught me, go to him. Just go to him. Just give him a blank page. And so that's something that I still do to this day. As women, we tend to demonstrate our love by doing things. We cook. We clean, we decorate the house, we take care of our family. We do things to demonstrate our love. But we're kind of, in a way, I think we naturally set ourselves up to almost a point where we feel like we're earning love of our family. And it's this constant striving to do more and more and more. And when they don't notice what we do, because honestly, 90% of everything we do is undone the next day. That's why I love ironing, because it's like the one thing I do that I can show you when I'm done. Look, I took this, I made this. But we berate ourselves when we feel like we haven't done enough. Where we mess up with all this, when we have these problems, when we suffer with whatever it is we're struggling with, is we use the Father as a last resort, or we feel like we have to kind of get our act together a little more and make it a little prettier before we take it to him. You know? I don't ever want my kids doing that. I want my kids to think, I have a problem. Let me go talk to Mom. She'll help me with this. She'll know what to do. And to this day, it's the weirdest thing. It's such a blessing that I have not deserved. It's something it's a gift. My son will call me from college, and he'll say, he's very official in his language, he'll say, "Mom, I'd like your counsel on something." And he will talk out his problems, he'll talk out his feelings, he'll talk about so many things, and he gets that from his father. I internalize things. I'm not a talker with like problems and things. I just deal with it. But I keep telling people, I'm like, he needs to find one of them women that loves to talk about their feelings. He gonna make one heck of a husband. They gonna love him. But I have found that the greatest miracles in our life take place when we just give the Father a blank page. And that's how I trained myself to be a happy person. So I want to tell you a little bit about kind of my journey into depression. I had never been depressed a day in my life. And it hit me like a freight train. It was postpartum, after my son was born. My mom, I remember he was about 2 weeks old. Brady had colic. Anybody have a colicky baby? Yeah. And one day I decided that I was so exhausted and it was so hard going to sleep only to be woke up 10 minutes later. It was like, you wake up and you're like, name, rank, serial number. It was awful. And I decided I wasn't going to sleep anymore. And this made total sense to me. And I don't know exactly, I had to have been behaving very erratically because my mom came over and she started crying. I mean, she was just broken seeing how I was behaving and stuff. And I had been reaching out to my doctor and they didn't believe me. They said, "Oh, it's just baby blues, you'll get over it." And so my mom called her the next day and she said, "No, this is not baby blues. Something is seriously wrong. I'm bringing her in today and you're going to see her." And so I did go and speak with my doctor, and she gave me, we tried a series of different medications until we found something that just made me feel normal. So I do want to tell y'all, sometimes that may be what you need, okay? Because I had a chemical issue. But here's the problem. Once I had gone there, I am always prone to depression now. It is something I struggle with my whole life. I haven't taken any medication for probably 15 years or so because the Father, I took my blank page to the Father. I'm not saying that you still don't need the medication. Everybody's different, okay? But I took my blank page to the Father, and He taught me how to use that. And He taught me how He uses that. And that's what I want to explain to y'all today. Once you have been depressed, once you have gotten into that pattern, I don't care if there's a medication that will help. It will not fix it. There is work to do because your brain has gotten into a pattern of negativity and of kind of doomsday thinking and stuff. It's almost like it's got a taste of that and it gets stuck in that pattern, and you have to work to get yourself out of it. So these are the things that I did, okay? I have a series of videos called Learning to Be a Happy Person. And it all started with this. The first thing is I had to sink low enough. I had to sink low enough. I call it the black pit. Now, sometimes in depression, if y'all seen that commercial, Depression Hurts, it does. Your body hurts everywhere. Your soul hurts, your heart hurts, every muscle, every bone. You ache and you hurt. That is very real. And it is so exhausting trying to kind of swim against that tide that it's very tempting to just wrap that depression around you like a warm blanket and just go to sleep for a while in it. And sometimes we need to do that. I'm not advocating it, but you get to a point where you're like, okay, I need to see happiness again. Don't ever think that a depressed person doesn't want to be happy. We want it more than anything. But there is a place where you truly feel without hope. You feel like there is no hope of ever feeling joy again. And I think you have to get to that point before you can turn it around. I had to decide if I really wanted to change. And it's kind of like that last burst of energy. Am I going to swim down again, or am I going to break for the surface? I had to realize that if I wanted to change, it was up to me. Nobody could do it for me. We are a work in progress, every one of us. And if we don't work on us, we make no progress. Earlier on in my life, I realized the Father's blessed me greatly with examples of the kind of women I wanted to be and the kind of women I didn't want to be. And I'm not saying that to be ugly. Y'all know exactly what I'm talking about. And I realized at a young age that these wise, sweet, older women, they don't just become that way because they happen to get older. They decide early in their life who they want to be when they grow up, the kind of person they want to be, and they live through that example. I remember my son was like 5. I was telling him stories about different great men in history and the things they had done, and I said, you need to decide what kind of a man you want to be when you grow up. And you need to be thinking about that now. Think about how that person would do this and that and how they would live through their life. And so I had to decide that I was ready to change. In order to change, and this is a tough one, y'all, I had to accept responsibility for my own actions, thoughts, and words. This is a tough one. If I'm in traffic somewhere and I lose it and I get frustrated, it is not the fault of the traffic. It is not the fault of the person who honked their horn. It is the fault of me. If I snip at somebody, if I say something ugly, no one can provoke me to do that outside of me. My tongue is controlled from within. I had to accept full responsibility for my actions. I also had to give up, and y'all, this is a big one, I had to give up the hobby of complaining. In this day and age, we're actually glorified when we find things to complain about. Cynicism is something that people are very proud of, you know, and we got these little keyboard warriors on Facebook. Who you are is who you are when only the Father's looking at you. They used to say when no one is looking. Who we really are is who we are when only the Father sees, and He sees all. This is kind of off topic here, but we were in, my mom and I were in a store about 2 weeks ago, and we had shopped. It was a Coach outlet, and we had shopped, and they rang up my purchase and told me the total, and it was about $200 off. Anyway, and I said, "Are you sure?" Because I had saved up my money all year for this trip. I said, "Are you sure?" And she said, "Yeah, I'm sure." I said, "I really don't think that's right." And so she looked, she goes, oh, you're right. I forgot to put this, and this. And I said, "Okay, thank you." I said, "I feel much better now." And when we left, I was kind of expecting my mom to say, "Christy, that would have saved you too," you know. And I looked at Mama and I said, "You know, the moment I realized that total was off, if I had not said anything, I was stealing." The moment I realized that, I was stealing. And Mama said, "I know." And she said, "You know, I'm always proud of y'all. Y'all always do the right thing." And I thought, oh, you know, that was awesome. So that's who we are, you know, because the Father sees all. But then I had to decide how bad I wanted it. Did I want it bad enough to work for it? You have got to want to be happy, like a dog wants a bone. Like a dog who is chained to a tree, and he's going to drag himself to that bone with every ounce of energy he can. And once you get it, you're going to cling to it, and you ain't letting go for nothing. And I had to get to that point of determination. I was so desperate to be happy. And I went to the Father and I said, "You can do this. I can't do this by myself, but I know you know how to do this." And He started showing me. Now I want y'all to understand. Our husbands may be the spiritual leaders of our home. Do not take it lightly, what I'm about to say. We are the emotional leaders of our home. The way we behave affects everyone. I have noticed things that I just think are a little funny little things. Like, in the South, we give everything a nickname. Well, I change my nicknames up a lot. And if I'll start calling someone honey, by the end of the week, everyone in my family is using the word honey. You know, they follow my language. Even my husband, they're like little mimes, you know. One of my exclamations is good night, you know, which is really awkward because you can't ever type it on social media. Everybody's, oh, good night. Yeah. But I'll say, good night. And now my husband, he'll say, good night. You know, they pick up on everything. We are the emotional leaders of our home. That's very important. So I had to realize that once I wanted to get my way out of this, I am prone to depression. And I look at it very much like a recovering alcoholic. You know, I have a friend who's a recovering alcoholic, and they always refer to themselves as an alcoholic. And they realize, hey, I'm prone to this certain behavior, and so there's certain places and environments that are not good for me that I don't ever want to be in again. And I'm that way with these things. There's certain things that I try to avoid. So I have 6 steps to learning how to be a happy person. And this is something I counsel my friends on all the time because these have really worked for me. And I teach my kids these things. I teach, if you give me 5 minutes of your time and tell me you're suffering from depression, I'm going to give you one of these. Number 1 is joy markers. I find if there's anything I'm dreading, if there's anything I just can't bear the thought of, what I'll do instead is I attach a joy marker to it. And then every time I start thinking about that, I shift my thoughts to the joy marker instead. Here's an example. My sister-in-law had an hour drive into work, and she hated it. And she had talked herself into it being way worse than it was. Don't we do that? She's like, I just get so tired. I have to drive an hour every day. It's horrible. I just dread it. I can't even hardly go to sleep at night because I just have this sense of dread, you know, in there. And I said, okay. I said, what's your favorite drink? And she said, Pellegrino. I love Pellegrinos. This is little sparkling water stuff. And I said, all right, I want you to go to Sam's. I want you to buy a case of Pellegrinos, and I want you to take them to work. And don't drink Pellegrinos anywhere else. And every night when you leave work to go home, take you 1 Pellegrino and put it in the fridge. And every morning on your way into work, whenever you start thinking about, oh, I'm dreading going to work, I hate to think, ooh, when I get there, I'm going to have that Pellegrino instead. So a joy marker is a very important thing. I have joy markers throughout my day. I have a planner. It's like one of those Erin Condren type things, but I got one that's custom. And at the bottom of every day, I have 3 spots to put my joy markers for the day. This is something I'm very insistent on. My first joy marker is I get up very early in the morning because I work on the internet and I need times without people. So I get up my alarm's set at 3:45 every morning, and I make my coffee and I sit in a quiet room and I very slowly sip my coffee. That's my first joy marker. And I do something really silly. Before I make my coffee, I look in the kitchen and I decide which mug I want to drink out of that day. I have some fun little mugs. I'm like, ooh, what mood am I in today? You know, and I pick my mug, I make that a thing, and then I make my coffee and I sit and I enjoy my coffee. Another thing I do during the day is every day, whenever possible, I go step outside for about 10 minutes or so, at least, because I don't think we were meant to live indoors surrounded by walls and things. And for me personally, I feel like being inside, it's easier for the world to kind of take over everything. And I need to go outside. I need the walls and stuff that are separating me from seeing the Father's creation. I need them gone. And just being outside and looking up at the trees, it reminds me of how big everything is and how small these little problems are that the world likes to tell us are these huge things, you know. So that's another one of my joy markers. You can find a joy marker to attach to anything. Anything you have that you're dreading, attach a joy marker to it, and then shift your focus to that whenever you start dreading it. The second thing I do, and I'm still adamant about this, change your soundtrack. Music, if you suffer from depression, I think certain people are more susceptible to music. And if you're someone who suffers from depression and stuff, music has a greater impact on me than some of the people I know. And what I listen to really affects me. And so I had to delete so much music. I mean, so much music. And because even some of the songs, it wasn't that they were sad, but they were part of my life that was sad. And it took me back to that. I can listen to a sad song and my body reacts as if I'm actually experiencing that in my life. And a sad song can put me in a depression for weeks. And so I'm very particular about what music I listen to. My husband and I, probably about 6 years or so ago, we gave up all secular music except for my songs about Bob the Snail and stuff like that, but that's just good stuff. And they hear that all the time. We gave up all secular music. We only listen to edifying, uplifting music. And I don't even, we don't listen to the same music. I'm more of I have what I call an inner drill sergeant. So like my husband, if he's having a bad day, his inner voice would say, "Oh, Ricky, get up. It'll be better than you think it's going to be." My inner voice would be like, "You're going to get up out of this bed, and you're going to go in there, you're going to pour your coffee, and you're going to have a good day." You know, when we were little, I guess I get that from my father. They would take us on these vacations. I remember the first time we went to Disney World, he said, "You're going to go in here, and you're going to have fun whether you like it or not." So that's my inner voice. But I had to change my soundtrack entirely. Ricky changed, my husband, he changed his soundtrack entirely as well. We listened to two entirely different genres of music. Both of us listen to Christian music, but let's just say we don't listen to music together. We do not listen to music together. My kids still live in fear because when they went to a private Christian school for a while, I used to always tell them, like, man, because the ladies in the office loved me. I always brought them food and stuff. And they would joke with them. I said, "Tell the kids I'm going to be up here to rap this week." And they would joke and say, "Your mom, she said she's going to come rap over the PA system." And my kids would just go pale because they're thinking it's a joke. My kids are home hearing me do this. And my kids are like, "No, please don't." So music is extremely important. If it does not edify the Lord and build you up, I encourage you to get rid of it. I encourage you to get rid of it. Do not underestimate the power of music in your life and for your mental health. I'm very protective of my mental health. Controlling my thoughts. This is number 3. I learned how to control my thoughts. Now, doesn't that sound crazy? But you know what? That is the most wonderful thing you could ever do for yourself. And the Father meant for us to do that. The Father has given us a way to do that. But we have to work on it. The best thing you could ever do, you know, all those fears and those anxieties that swirl around in your head, what if you could shut them off? Because I can. It has taken years. It has taken practice. It has taken work. But just like when I was 23, I figured out a way that I could go to college. And I remember telling my mom, "I really want to go, but I'm 23. At the time, that was old. I said, if I go 4 years straight, I'll be almost 30 when I graduate. And she said, "If you don't go, what are you going to be?" You know? Yeah. So commit to this. Here's how I learned how I started training myself to control my thoughts. My inner drill sergeant stepped in again. Every time I thought, not even said, I thought one negative thing, I would stop myself and make myself think of 3 positive things. Every time. The first day, I put a rubber band on my wrist, and I would kind of snap it, because I'd seen that somewhere, you know, and I'd think of 3 positive things. My wrist was hurting pretty bad, so I quit that mess. But every time I thought one negative thing, I would stop and replace it with 3 positive things. If I'm in the car and I'm in a lot of traffic, I would be like, "Oh, this is so frustrating. Wait a minute. I have a car. It's a beautiful day. I have a place to go. I have a family." If I would be stressed or frustrated about my job, I'd be like, "You know what? Wait a minute. I get to work from home. I get to spend time with my kids. Wow, isn't this amazing? I have a wonderful career that the Father gave me." Everything, there's always a positive. Now, This one is especially difficult for people. I'm still working on my husband. He likes to narrate traffic. And he'll be like, what are these people doing? Do you see all this traffic? I can't believe all these cars. How long is this going to be? And, I'll tell him, Ricky, we're all here. We're all seeing the same thing, I've actually, everybody's always talk about trying to get people to express their feelings and talk about them more. And I'm the one, I'll tell my husband, internalize. He's getting a lot better at it, but that's just a habit of his. But I strongly, strongly urge you, work on controlling your thoughts. It is a very powerful weapon. And the enemy uses our thoughts against us. Renew your mind. Think on the Father. Number 4, and this is actually an easy one, but I think most of us just let it fly. It's controlling your words. I learned to control my words. Your own ear hears your voice and gives it a greater precedence than any other. And I remember my daughter a couple weeks ago, she said something negative about herself. And I said, wait a minute. I said, you're talking about my baby. Don't let me hear you talk that way about my baby. And I feel the same way about me. I'm not going to say ugly things about myself to myself. I talk nicer to myself now. And I realize what an effect my words have on the people in my home. Our words are a sharp, sharp sword. And when we get frustrated or when we get stressed, we can cut everyone around us that we hold dear. I saw this great quote. It said, I think I'm going to talk about my next speech, but heal your wounds or you'll bleed on those who never cut you. And that's so important that we not do that. One of the mental exercises I do, we live in, how do y'all have, we have tornadoes, like, oh my goodness, the tornadoes in Alabama. And my husband, he's from Georgia, but they didn't really have a lot of tornadoes and stuff like we do. So when we first got married, every time there was a tornado watch, he'd wake me up. Every time. It's a lot, y'all. And so finally I told him, I said, look, if there's a tornado warning, and if you look outside and see a funnel cloud, and if it is headed towards our house, then you can wake me up. But here's the thing about that tornado. A tornado swirls, and this is what the world does to us. The world just gets us in a frenzy, swirling all around us. All kinds of problems, all kinds of things it's throwing at us, But what happens? If you get caught up in that tornado, you're just going to be swirling with it. But if you step into the eye of the storm, there's calm. And you can just let that world crazy just swirl around you all at once. And you can stand here and be in the eye of the storm. And that's what it is when we remain in His peace. When we refuse to give up His peace. I tell people in my fellowship group, I'm like, shalom is more than just peace. It's a wholeness of peace that can only come from the Father. And so when this world starts swirling around us, I step into that peace. That's when my thoughts are taken captive. I control my words. And I have my joy marker right there. I'm with the Father. So that's very important, controlling your words. And we do all this through the power of prayer. Father, help me. Father, help me. One of the things that I recommend is don't do all this at once. Pick a week. Joy markers 1 week. The next week, work on your soundtrack. The next week, work on your words. By His bountiful grace, the Father tends to work with me on 1 or 2 things at a time. Can y'all imagine when you first started seeing this, if He dropped everything on you at once? I'd be in a straitjacket over there looking like a picked bird and pulled all my hair out. Number 5, get out of the world and into the Word. This is how the Father used my depression to bring me closer to Him. The world exhausts us. We're told, the world tries to tell us that it can refuel and re-energize us, but it's the opposite. It drains us. Living in the world drains us because we have one source. We have one source, and that's the Father. And I learned that when I'm going through a depression, that's when the Father is saying, slow down. You're running on empty. You need to come back to me. And so when I'm going through a depression, I spend more time with him. I'm better to myself. I sleep a little more. I may have an extra cup of tea one day. I spend as much time as possible in the Word. All the unnecessary work, I get what I call Sabbath vision again. Sabbath vision is when you have a pile of laundry on the couch, but it's Saturday, so you don't see it anymore. I love me some Sabbath vision. One of the things, when I started trying to figure out how to overcome my depression, I was reading about famous people that I admired who had suffered from depression. One of those was Winston Churchill. I love how he handled his depression. He suffered from major depression his whole life. Do y'all know, by the way, that Abraham Lincoln suffered from depression so severe that he was afraid to carry a knife in his pocket because he was afraid he would take his own life? That's impactful. Winston Churchill called his depression his little black dog. And when he was going through depression, he would say, my little black dog is following me around again. And y'all, this is extremely important because he separated it from himself. The number one mistake that women make when we go through a depression, I'm depressed, my marriage must be horrible. I'm depressed, my life must be awful. We look for reasons of that outside of ourselves and we try to put the blame on it. Sometimes, y'all, we're depressed. We need to learn to rest in him a little more, instead of trying to find problems and causes outside of ourselves that are just simply not true. And so I love dogs, and I didn't want to call my depression little black dog, so I decided it was an old mule, and I named him Abner. And so when Abner comes to town, what he wants me to do is he would like nothing more than for me to get on his back and parade him right down the middle of Main Street. And there's been times that I did that. And it doesn't help. So instead, when Abner comes around, I'll take him out of the barn, I'll walk him around the yard a little bit, and then I go put him back in his stall. Because I have learned the difference between overcoming depression and living in depression is who feeds their mule in the barn and who sets a place for it at the dinner table. So Abner has to stay in the barn. But I am better to myself. I slow down. I recognize I'm running on empty. I'm running low on the source, and I need to put that better in my life. I think two of the greatest, I'll talk more on this tomorrow, two of the greatest tools that the enemy uses, one of them's into play with this, one is righteous indignation. He uses righteous indignation to turn us away from the purpose the Father has for us a lot. We think it's righteous, so hey, And the other is noble busyness. Noble busyness will leave you exhausted. When the Father calls you to do something, he's going to supply, okay? But we go and find out these other things we can do, and it's noble, it's busy, and it keeps us, we're doing stuff for the kingdom, but he didn't call us to do that, y'all. We got to keep to our purpose. Number 6. So number 5 is get out of the Word and into the world. And out of the world and into the Word. Goodness gracious. Y'all, it's late. I believe that when God turns the lights out, it's time to go to bed. So get out of the world and into the Word. We have to spend more time with him. It is the source that sustains us. He is everything. Number 6, when I'm going through depression, this is what my mom taught me. Whenever you're going through a hard time in your life, find someone who has it harder than you and help them. So that brings me, I call that one love on others. In the South, we call it loving on people. I didn't know that was a thing. I had a reporter at my house one time, and Katie was upset. She was a little baby. She was about 4, and she's upset. And I said, "Come here, baby. You want me to just love on you a little bit?" And she came in my lap, and I just loved on her. And that reporter's like, "Loving on her?" I said, "Yeah, that's what we call it. You just love on people." And she said, "I'm going to use that." You got to love on people more. You have to learn to love people more. Part of that is we have to learn to love ourselves and accept how much He loves us. And number 7, and y'all, the Father has been showing this to me, and I want y'all to ruminate on it, okay? That means thinking on it in Alabamian. I want you to ruminate on this for a while, because I have found, He has been revealing this to me more and more, the solution to every problem. And I know this is going to think it may sound crazy at the start, but the solution to every problem we as believers have is to learn to love Him more. Learn to love Him more. If we love the Lord our God with all our heart and all our soul and all our mind, what are we going to be doing? We're going to wake up every morning, we're going to go straight to Him. We're going to live every day thinking about Him. We're going to praise Him through the day. We're going to ask for His help and guidance in all things. Y'all know how much trouble we'd stay out of? How much stress and anxiety we'd stay out of if we love the Father with all our heart and all our soul and all our mind? That's what it's all about. And so I think He uses these things when we go chasing after the world, when we go with our noble busyness, when we get caught up in our righteous indignation, when we get in the cycle that we put ourselves in of trying to earn our family's love when they already love us, y'all. When we do this, he's gonna jerk a knot in our tail. That's another Southernism. He's gonna pull us back to Him, and sometimes the only way He can do it is by allowing us to fall and allowing our tanks to run completely empty. Because if y'all are anything like me, it's so frustrating, but I turn to Him as a last resort so often. And so that's how He uses depression. When I start feel it coming on, and I can see it, it's almost like you see clouds rolling in from a storm. You feel it rolling in. And I slow things down, and I just mentally, it's like I grab my Bible, and I just imagine myself climbing up into His lap and Him putting His arms around me, and we rest together. And so I want to encourage you, no matter what you're going through now, because we are all broken in some way, no matter what someone you love is going through, or no matter what you're going to go through in the future, we do not know the answers, but He does. All you have to do is give Him a blank page, and then you meet Him every day, and you work that out together. It's like I tell people when I'm trying to get them to read the Word, my Facebook group is all dedicated to encouraging people to read the Word. Make an appointment, make a date with the Father, and don't stand Him up. So I hope this spoke to your heart. If you have any questions or anything, I'm happy to talk to anybody and just share my personal experience, because this has made a difference in my life. And I can honestly say that I am grateful that the Father gave me the gift of depression, because it has drawn me infinitely closer to Him. Thank you.
Thank you, Christy. You all had a scarf in your bag, and that scarf is for you to keep, and it's to use this week if you want to. I put a little blurb in your program. If you want time alone, you put that over your head, and we will leave you alone. And I don't care what you do while it's on your head, but it's just a signal to us that you're being alone with God, or alone in your thoughts, or alone in the Word, whatever it is, because otherwise you can't really get away from us. We're all here, which is the point. But if you want to have some time alone with your Creator, that's actually really good too. So that's yours to keep, and take it home. And if you have people around you at home, like most of us do, and sometimes you just need a moment, put it over your head, but you teach them ahead of time. Mommy just needs some time. My plan was, after these sessions, because we're really challenging you, these sessions, and they're kind of deep and contemplative, was I thought, well, we'll end really quiet. But no, because Kayte and Christy and I discussed that we have so much hope. There's things we need to think about that are hard things to think about and to overcome, but we have this incredible hope. So we don't walk out sad or certainly not depressed or anything other than the full of joy and the hope that is to come. So we're going to end on a fun note. We're going to sing a song, and if you like this song, we will end every single session with this song because it's one of my favorites, and it puts us back into the big picture. What Christy and Kayte and I are going to do this week is we're going to really microanalyze little parts of our hearts and our minds and our souls. But at the end, we want you to see the big picture, and I feel like this song really does that, doesn't it, Christy? So let's sing, George.